Within Chapter 4, another area I saw that several students had questions was with learning objective number 5 and the total quality management, excuse me, and the costs of quality. So let's go over that learning objective, look at some of the basics again, and then we'll go over a problem related to that. So if we look at the learning objective, number 5, it's to describe and use the costs of quality framework. And if we look at page, let's just go to this page real quick here. Here it describes your total cost of quality as prevention costs, appraisal costs, internal failure costs, and external failure costs. So the prevention costs, we're talking about avoidance here, things that are built into the system to check for things before they happen. And so going back to the drawing board, making sure that things are built in as far as prevention costs go. So we'll look at some examples of that in just a moment. Appraisal costs, so that's detecting poor quality goods and services, where prevention was avoiding them, then appraisal is trying to detect them. And so maybe a test that's given and there's pass or fail, and then you have to detect that in some way. Internal failure costs. Okay, so that's when we incur defective units, and those costs have already been incurred before the delivery to the customer. Okay, so it's internal versus external. Okay, so external, of course, being the worst. We haven't prevented it. We haven't been able to detect it. We didn't catch it before it went out. Now the product has gone out and it is defective. Okay, so there's costs that are incurred along the line here. So let's look at an example. So this is Churchill Industries. They manufacture freezers. Here is the information provided to help calculate the costs, and then requirements below. So requirement 1, we'll just read through the 3 requirements before we start with that. The first requirement is to prepare the cost of quality report. In addition to calculating the total cost of each category, we'll also calculate the percentage of each as of the total. Number 2 is a question such as, why would the variable repair cost of the customer's home generally be higher than the in-factory rework cost? And number 3, how can we use the cost of quality report? How can the use of the cost of quality report lead to improvements in the production process or in the quality of the product itself? All right, so let's take a look at the categories. So remember, prevention. So prevention is detection in advance, right? So improving the design. Okay, so the problem tells us that there are hours spent by the engineering improving the design. They tell us how many hours are spent, 1,000 hours. Okay, so that's a preventative measure. And then, of course, we need to know how much do the engineers get paid. Okay, so they've spent 1,000 hours. The design engineers are paid a labor rate of 75 per hour. So our total cost over here is 75,000. Okay, the 1,000 hours times the rate of $75 an hour. So that's our prevention cost. Appraisal. Okay, so that's testing, inspection. So if we look over in our problem, we find that there was some testing and inspection done, and that's given in hours per unit. So they spent half an hour per unit testing and inspecting. So we have to know how many units there were. And the problem tells us right up here that there were 5,000 units manufactured and sold. So if we just multiply the 5,000 times half an hour for each unit inspected, that tells us the total amount of time, and then we need to know, well, what's the rate per time. So we're told here that the inspection costs per hour are $40 per hour. Okay, so 1/2 times 1,000 times $40 gives us cost of 100,000. All right, internal failure. So that's rework. That's where we catch it in advance before it's sold to the customer. Okay, so they tell us the average variable rework costs per freezer are 400. And then they also tell us the number of units that are reworked in the plant after the inspection. Okay, so the inspection takes place, then they have to go and rework 10% of those units. Right, so 10% of the total units of 5,000 multiplied by the average cost of rework for each one of $400. Fairly expensive there. So total cost 200,000. And then finally, external failures. So this is going to be our most expensive because we're going to have lost sales, we're going to have warranty costs. So warranty costs are given here, as well as our lost sale information. But the warranty costs right here, 8%. Percentage of units repaired under warranty, 8%. And so 8% times the 5,000. And then it also gives us a price of the warranty costs, average variable warranty costs at 450. Okay, so 8% times 1,000 times the 450 gives us a cost of 180,000. And then our lost sales. So problem tells us estimated lost sales is 300 units. We also know what our selling price per unit is, and we also know what our variable manufacturing and selling costs per unit are, 800. So if we take the number of units lost and multiply that by our sales minus our variable and selling costs per unit, we get a total of 210,000. Those two added together, 390,000. The total for all four of those, 765,000. And then, of course, we can very easily calculate percentages as was required in problem requirement number 1 as well. Number 2, how would the variable repair cost at the customer's home generally be higher than the in-factory rework costs? So why would that be? Well, we know that there's other expenses, the service calls, including truck, equipment, gas, time. Those are just some examples here that could be involved with that. And then finally, number 3, how can the use of the cost of quality report lead to improvements in the production process? Well, if they figure out, of course, what type of rework they're having to do, well, they can build that then into their prevention, hopefully, so that they don't have the rework or internal failure or external. They're able to reduce those. So they can see, where they're not spending enough money, and they hopefully can reallocate funds to the areas that will improve the design and help reduce those failure costs. So that is learning objective 5 for chapter 4. Please let me know if you have any questions.